All right, now in the middle of our prelims, we have Elizeu Zaleski facing off against Rinat Fakhretdinov. Fakhretdinov now 3-0 in the UFC, 22-2 all time. And Zaleski 10-3 in the UFC, a forgotten name that came back in June of this year. Won a close split decision against Abubakar Nurmagomedov as basically a pick'em fight. We knew it was going to be close, and it provided to be just as close as everyone expected. So he's had some fights canceled over the past number of years now. Was scheduled to fight the likes of Bilal Muhammad, the Leech, Jingliang Li, who he ended up fighting in 2019 and lost via knockout. But then names like Shavkat Rakhmonov, Munir Lazet, so talented guys. We all know how good he is. I mean, shit, he knocked out Sean Strickland by a spinning hook kick. No one does that. Israel Adesanya couldn't figure that out, and Strickland broke his will. So, I mean, he is a talented striker. Now he's had a bunch of USADA suspensions, and he really needs to keep the distance to be able to land that damage with those kicks and punches. He's not going to be given that. He's not going to be given time to find the range against Fakhretdinov, and I'll let Andy get into that. But Zaleski coming on, he's had 2 fights now since the end of 2020, so in just over 39 months now, and so it'll be interesting to see how he really comes back and continues to progress at the age of 36, or if he progresses at all. So it's an interesting one. Andy, what do you see in Fakhretdinov?
Yeah, so I think it's going to be a bit more one-sided than we think. Where I think that I agree with you. Like Zaleski has that dynamic striking ability where he knocked out somebody who is as durable as Sean Strickland. But with Fakhretdinov's fight style, it's just his bread and butter is his ground game, where he gets you down and then goes to work. And he completely demolished an electric fighter like Brian Battle. I know that's not necessarily a name that ranks up with some of the ones that Zaleski has fought, but with seeing Brian Battle's rise and how dynamic of a fighter he is, as well as like what Fakhretdinov has done in the past, I just feel like he's going to be able to get it done here. He's so dominant when it comes to getting guys to the mat or in the clinch. And I think that he should also be getting a ranking after this fight. Whoever wins this one is probably going to go into the top 15. He's like if it doesn't happen right after this fight, maybe it happens in a couple months as Amosov, Randy Rude-Boy, Neil Magny, and Vicente Luque all have fights in the next 3 months. So one of them loses, and if he doesn't go up after this weekend, then he'll go up here in the coming months if he gets the win. I think he's priced a little too far out to be a parlay leg, but what I would say is like some of these big favorites, if you feel one way about them early on in the week or even weeks in advance, just try to get in early and like lock it up into a parlay. If your book has open parlays, which is rare to find nowadays, but if you still have a book that does that, something like that gives you an opportunity to lock in some of these that are always going to get you a positive CLV, if not always, like 95% of the time, because people love slamming these huge favorites. And he's turned into that where it's almost unaffordable at minus 350. But just kind of curious to see what your thoughts on him are as the fighter in this matchup, as well as how you're getting an angle on this. Because me personally, I cannot find a betting angle on this one because I like Fakhretdinov that much.
Yeah, and I want to continue to touch on that point that you were making about getting in on favorites early, and that might take us over the 5 minutes here. But for this, for the point that we're making, I think it's important to sort of drive home. So excuses if we go a little bit over the 5 minutes here. But getting in on those fighters early is imperative. And given that we aren't going to release the podcast until Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of the week of, most of the time that time has passed. So make sure to follow us on Twitter. You've got Andy at Andy HH Sports, and I'm at Rick HH Sports, because we can tweet out some of those plays early that we identify and know that we'll be on, even if we're not on them. And I say that as a caveat, as in Fakhretdinov opened up, I think, around minus 275 or so. He's up to minus 350. Both of the Bonfim brothers, I know Gabriel in the co-main event has moved about 300 points. So you can get both sides, even if you're not like set on, I want that guy to win. If you know that the public's going to be on him, which we, given our expertise and the time that we've done this, can realize, you can drive home a lot of value where you can end up taking the other side and profit regardless. Even if you didn't want that guy, you can get off them. So I think that's a really important point as we continue to move forward, especially with this fight card, because there are a lot of heavy favorites. So now getting back to the actual fight that we're talking about, Fakhretdinov is just a world-class freestyle wrestler. He is not going to give anybody any time. And if you watch that Brian Battle fight, I don't even know if I'd recommend it. And there's the horn, but I'll go on for just a couple minutes here, or just a minute. He wrestled Brian Battle. I think he held him down for 13 minutes of that fight. And it's
so
impressive
one-sided
how he's able to do it. His wrist control on the ground, his top pressure, and his ability to keep guys along the cage is very interesting. And most fighters, when they wrestle, want to have it in open space because they can use the opponent can use the cage to get back up. He uses it as an impediment to his opponent, and it's brilliant. And Zaleski has struggled historically with guys who wrestle throughout. And so while his striking is dangerous, I just don't think he's going to be able to use it. Fakhretdinov is just going to jump right into to wrestling, and he'll likely get a finish. So Fakhretdinov now at minus 350. I don't have that. I've got the under in this fight. I think that Zaleski at aging is either going to struggle on the ground, or we're going to have some dangerous fight on the feet. So I'm going to take the under. I would take Fakhretdinov inside the distance at minus 110, but with the under 2.5 being minus 110 as is, I don't see a point. Cover yourself with the risk. Take the under 2.5. If the fight ends in the last 2.5 minutes of the third round, then you say fuck me and you move on. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to move on to the sixth fight of the night. We've got Daniel Marcos facing UFC debutant. That doesn't sound right. Victor Hugo. We'll see you there. Hopefully I can figure it out by then.
Coming up next, we've got Daniel Marcos at 15-0 versus Victor Hugo, who is coming in on his UFC debut and has the nickname of Striker, as you can see in Rick's name case. If you're watching on YouTube, find us on YouTube at Happy Hour Sports. Rick, I have a question for you. Your nickname is Striker as well with Victor Hugo. Do you know off the top of your head, without looking, how many submission victories Striker has in his career? He has fought professionally 28 times.
7. I can tell you because I did the notes, but if you're trying to catch me off guard here, I can play dumb, but I don't want to play dumb to our viewers.
He has 9 submissions and 8 knockouts. So I think that we should call him, the rest of the preview, we should call him Submission instead of Striker. So Submission is on his UFC debut here after rattling off a 13-fight winning streak, including a victory on Dana White's Contender Series in the beginning of October this year. So he's got a 1-month turnaround from his Dana White Contender Series win heading into this fight this weekend in Brazil. Daniel Marcos, on the other hand, has had 2 fights in the UFC under his belt, both this year, and he had a Dana White Contender Series victory in 2022. He's still got that perfect 15-0 record to his name as a professional fighter. Rick, my question for you is, what do you see in this fight here as Marcos is sitting around a minus 250 favorite paired with that unblemished record that he's coming into the bout with?
Yeah, I go Hugo. And that's a very that's a very quick answer, but his record, you don't often see male UFC fighters with 28 fights on their record coming into the UFC. Typically you'll see him hot, sort of like Petrino, where you're 9-0, Marcos, where you're 13-0, and then you jump in or you've hit a run. And he's just been on an incredible tear early in his career. 2011 to 2013, he fought 11 times in very small, questionable competitions. So his record is a little bit inflated from that, but over the past now 8 years, he's been fighting better competition and he's been winning dominantly. And so he is a guy that on the feet, he can land with overhand rights. He's got a left hook that's powerful and he loves to sit down on. He leaves a little bit to be desired on the in-betweens. He can get hit. He'll leave his head out there and he holds his hands low as fuck. Excuse my language. But he's got solid kicks. So more or less, it's all offense. His takedowns are good. His BJJ is fantastic. Submissions he has 9 submissions to his name. Our guy's submissions here, he can get it done anywhere. Now he's taking the fight on short notice, and he's going up against a pretty defensively sound Marcos. But we know exactly what Marcos is going to do. He's going to box your ears in from range. He's going to work the body really well and sit down on some body shots, which I love. And he's got some good leg kicks, but they're just to the legs. He doesn't do much to the body or head. And he's good defensively in scrambles, but he's not going to do much offensively. He's not going to threaten submissions. He has 0 submissions to his name. So I doubt that he's going to be able to get the advantage on a guy like Hugo here. But It's an interesting fight. It's a little bit of a weird one there. And so I've got the underdog Hugo at plus 206 to win outright. To win, I'm not placing a bet on that. My bets are going to go on Hugo inside the distance at plus 350. I think that Marcos's, I think his undefeated record goes away here. But then I'm also going to take under 2.5 at minus 145, similar to your under 2.5 at minus 143 earlier. I think that he knows what he's got to do here. And I think that Marcos, with, I believe, 2 decisions in his 2 UFC fights. Nope, he won his first via knees to the body against Simon Oliveira. But I think that we get a much closer fight. The Davy Grant fight against him was interesting, where his volume wasn't great. And Davy Grant was able to take it to him. Now, he busted up Davy Grant. And I think that he'll be able to bust up Hugo here some, but I think that Hugo will really push it out of Marcos, especially in Brazil. And we've got a veteran fighter who knows how to do that. So give me the under and give me Hugo to win inside the distance for a full unit on the under.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Hugo has a couple more paths to victory than Marcos does. I feel like Hugo, too, even though this is his UFC debut on a short notice, he has that home crowd backing, which I love a lot for the underdog here, especially that big of an underdog at plus 200. I'm going to just take him straight up on the money line at plus 200. You can find that at a couple spots: DK, BetMGM, Caesars. There's several spots where they have him at plus 200 right now. That's the way I'm going to go, just because I don't want to get too cute with it. But I do agree with your reasoning behind the inside the distance as well as with the under there. I think that it's definitely a much better value play than just taking the dog here like I am. So I'm going to go with Victor Hugo at plus 200 for half a unit. Rick's got Hugo inside the distance plus 350 for a quarter of a unit, as well as under 2.5 minus 145 for a full unit. Stay with us as we start to get into the main card here and kick it off the first of the Bonfim brother duos with Ismail Bonfim taking on Vince Pichel.